Drake, BYU goes out and just thrashes number 23 Colorado, and it ignites the debate. Should BYU have been given more consideration as an at-large team? Was it all a big, grand conspiracy? And on the one hand, there is some ingrained bias as to how far away BYU was from being an at-large at 10-2 with a win over 11-1 in top 10 ranked SMU when the season came to a close, and they backed that up in their Alamo Bowl victory. However, on the flip side, I am of the belief, because I want to preserve all the urgency that we can in the regular season, I want the most deserving teams, not who I think are the best, who would be favored here, or who could have done this, that, or the other thing. And when I looked at BYU's resume, I did not see an at-large. So I'm not retconning this and saying BYU should have been. Nope. I think the committee got it right in the parameters that they were assigned.
I'm not just saying this because BYU TV did send me a Christmas present.
You might be, though. You might be. I mean, that's a beautiful star.
But
beautiful
they
star.
did send me a glowing, literal Christmas present, unlike the University of Utah that denied credentials. And BYU this season in the college football playoff conversation should have been deeper in the conversation at the very least. I think that is a case that most people, national analysts, would look at the resume and say, yeah, we're probably going to give them a bit more of the flowers there at the very end or had them on a graphic somewhere. Spencer, here's my question. This is the biggest one for me. If BYU had Utah's preseason ranking and expectation, or a quasi 9 or 8 or 7, somewhere in that top 10 preseason, if we just gave the first ranking of the year in week 6, does BYU have not just a shot at large, but at the very least, a much better conversation piece?
They have a better chance.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay. I will agree with that particular point. Allow me to counter, though, to the anti-preseason rankings crowd. How are you going to assess teams that have quality wins? How are you going to differentiate teams that have similar records but haven't played similar schedules to the overwhelming majority of college football fans if you don't have a ranked wins metric or a weekly assessment of? I think what we should do with top 25 AP rankings is understand that it's an assessment of what a team has accomplished up to that point. Nobody gets into the preseason top 25 with no reason. You may not like the reason that a team is preseason top 25, but they don't get there by random drawing out of a hat. Every SEC team doesn't get there. Just the ones that had success the prior year and make good moves in the offseason that people can theorize can work. It doesn't mean that they always will, but I've heard a lot of discussion over the years from the anti-preseason top 25 crowd, and I don't buy into the fact that that's a viable solution or one that is even needed, quite frankly.
I'm not sure if it's a viable solution necessarily, but I do believe that's at play here. Where your national standing is and the rhetoric around you is going to affect your standing in the college football playoff. Hence, if you're the number 17.
But is that not incentivizing teams to be consistent year in and year out, to be committed to athletics, to put their brands out there as much as they possibly can? I feel like, though there's a drawback to it, I don't think that's the worst incentive structure. The teams that are rewarded are the ones that have invested and won the most over the years.
I think you're correct in that assessment, but hasn't BYU not done that by joining the Big 12, by actually joining a conference and competing at the top level of that conference? Now, granted, this whole conversation's moot if you win the games in front of you, but Ohio State had a bad loss and a good loss. BYU had a bad loss and their win, their good win. They had a good loss against a playoff team, and their good win was against a playoff team. Like their resume stacks up against a Texas who was lucky to beat a couple bowl teams this season, and the only one formidable top 25 opponent they played the regular season or they're in the SEC championship, Georgia, they lost to, even on Georgia's backup quarterback. So now you're going to tell me BYU at 10-2 with a head-to-head? Like, you're right. How do we, be good long term, and then you'll get more respect. You'll be ranked in the preseason, and then at the end of the year, we'll treat you with more respect, and we'll give you a nod in the playoff. But BYU, to your point, they went head-to-head against SMU. There's nothing else you can do aside from go head-to-head to prove that you're a better team than someone else. I think Oregon is a better team than Ohio State. Why? They played head-to-head, and Oregon won the football game. Does that completely warrant BYU being in over SMU? Maybe not. But Clemson? Resume, when we're talking resumes, Boise State, the head-to-head SMU.
So what you're discussing there is better teams, but because I am someone who never wanted the 12-team expansion
better
in the
than
first
BYU?
place.
You're saying they're better than BYU? What are you saying?
No. My point is you're making assessments on this team is better than that team. This team's better over here. I am fully in the camp of give it to the most deserving teams. That's what I would like to see. I think the ceiling for Ole Miss this year was higher than SMU. In no world did I want to see Ole Miss put into the playoff over SMU because then the losses that Ole Miss sustained throughout the course of the season didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
We just would have thrown up our hands. Oh, yeah, that one I guess didn't matter. And sure, you can look at Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame and say, hey, why didn't that one matter? Well, I think it did, in that if they had lost one more singular game, I don't think that Notre Dame would have been into the college football play. If they lost to USC last week of the regular season, I don't think they're in.
Yeah, can we talk that if we're going to talk, losses are one of those things that have become, you get a mulligan. You get a mulligan now. There are moot losses in college football, but if we're talking wins, that win against BYU, had BYU replaced SMU with Western Kentucky that week and played them at home, would there have been any different? Like, they didn't get any credit for beating a college football playoff team on the road early in the season. End of the year, I think at the very least, BYU deserved a mention or hey, let's at least put them above these 9-3 SEC teams with losses to Oklahoma. Like, Bama had two bad losses, one quality loss, two bad losses. BYU had one bad loss, one college football playoff loss. And people be like, oh, well, give context. Kansas was on a tear. I don't give a rat's butt. They were 5-7. That's a bad loss. There's not a way to spin that. They were 5-7. So for BYU, I just wish that wins. Is it wins? Is it strength of schedule? And when we're judging strength of schedule, at 8 games the SEC plays, why are they graded 8 conference games and no one seems to have an issue with that? I do believe
I do. Me, right here. Wow. Spencer McLaughlin has an issue with that unless you have a protected unless you have a protected ACC matchup that gives you another quality opponent, a la Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia Tech. I even throw into that Florida State. If you have a game like that is replacing your 9th SEC game, that's fine.
Yep.
But it's the Alabama's non-conference schedules of the world where I look at it and go, not okay, not good for the sport, and you're getting at what I've railed against for a long time, which is the biggest issue in college football has always been scheduling. The teams and universities have the ability to help set their own path to get to the playoff in the system that they're in. Of course they're going to be self-interested. Of course they're going to take advantage of it.
Can we go like rapid fire? I know we're kind of pushing time here. Can we go rapid fire? Just BYU, Colorado State. I think BYU wins that game. We learned that Michigan's not that healthy, not that good this season. I'm looking at Texas' schedule: UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Georgia. They lose to, but Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. I mean, this is a BYU team that could go 10-2, reasonably with Texas' schedule. But the strength of schedule metric is so outweighed because of whatever we use in college football for strength of schedule that uses recruiting rankings, and recruiting rankings are mostly pay to play. I do believe that. What do you think 24/7 is? What do you think 24/7 is? What do you think it is?
I don't think that's the driving force of how players get ranked.
Maybe not the driving force.
You can't hit 100% accuracy on player assessment. Right. The NFL hasn't been able to do it for years. They've whiffed.
The driving force.
There's a first-round pick whiff by the most valuable league, and the teams that make the most money in that league and are the most successful, they have first-round whiffs regularly. Player assessment at some level is a crapshoot there. That's a longer discussion, but we're going to wrap this one up with a quick thought on this. Brett McMurphy reported that there's serious discussion about not just giving the first round buys to the 4 highest ranked conference champions. I'm fully in support of that particular model. Are you?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Is it going to hurt the Big 12 overall? Yes, because as long as there are human beings in that room, they will put the Big 12 below the SEC, the Big 10, and the higher brands in the ACC. As you mentioned, those are schools that have won perennially. The Big 12 doesn't have really one of those who's had national prominence over the course of the last decade, like a Clemson or an Ohio State. So does it hurt the Big 12? Yes. Is it probably the best way to do this? Not probably, definitely, because you shouldn't be playing Penn State, Boise State in round 2 of the college football playoff. Sorry, God, but that's just kind of the way that it can't be like that.
Speaking of the Big 12, Arizona State plays Texas. That's a Big 12 SEC matchup, not a Pac-12 RIP and Big 12 matchup. Does Arizona State hang around in that game? I think they're absolutely capable. Drake doesn't get a chance for a sarcastic goodbye, and stick around for that coming up next.
Did you know DoorDash lets you request sauces from your Dasher now?
First, a reminder, this episode brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place. I don't love that for realignment. I do for finances because it makes it simpler. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year, Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Rocket Money makes it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. So go check them out and cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon.